Good morning. So our learning objective today is to continue planning our non-narrative report. We're going to use alliteration, we're going to use emotive language, and we're going to use descriptive language. Before that though, let's hear the next part of the story. Way up above, in the light of day, Hrothgar and his thanes, hearts heavy with anxiety, watched and waited by the pool. Fearful too were the Geatish warriors for their prince, especially when they saw blood bubbling up from the depths, marbling the surface of the water. Many long hours had passed now since Beowulf dived down into the deep, and most now believed that the famous hero could not this time be triumphant, but that the she-wolf, that devilish sea hag, had at last done him to death. As dusk came down over that dreary place, Hrothgar and his thanes turned sadly for home and hearth, all hope now abandoned. But the Geats stayed, stunned with grief, hoping against hope to see once more their beloved leader. But they knew well enough that they would not. Down below, in the ogre's lair, Beowulf looked about him in wonder at the heaped hoard of treasures, blood booty of that damned pair. Much good it was to them now. The Geat hero took none of these treasures when he left, only the head of Grendel, hunting the sword that had failed him, and the hilt of the giant sword that had done the she-wolf to death. Only the hilt remained of this deadly war weapon. The engraved blade itself had simply been melted away by the hot blood of the doomed fiend that lay headless there. So Beowulf, that sainted survivor, plunged once more into the deep, and with powerful strokes swam upward through the water, unhindered now by sea serpents and writhing monsters of the deep, for the pool was now cleansed of these vile creatures. Gone were all evil goes, where Grendel and his mother had gone, down to hell itself where they belonged, never to return again. The first his faithful companions saw of their beloved prince was his silver war helmet breaking the waves. Then, with spirits high with joy, they rushed to the water's edge to help him, wondering at his battle trophies, all of them thanking God for his victory and his safe return unharmed to their side. Quickly they loosened his mail shirt and helmet, and all welcomed him joyously, good friends and loyal hearth companions. So they left that dreadful pool behind them, blood red from shore to shore, and still as death. It was a place all of them were happy to leave, Beowulf most of all. A bold spring in their step, carefree now at heart, they followed the well-trodden path back towards Heorot. It was a triumphant procession, but a slow one, for that heavy head, Grendel's hideous head, had to be carried, and it was no easy matter, I can assure you. It took 4 of the strongest Geats to hold the spear steady, the dreaded head stuck high on the point, glaring in death to all about as they went. So, with Grendel's head aloft, they made their way to Heorot, 14 brave Geats and the great warrior prince. Marching into that splendid mead hall they came, much to the surprise and joy of everyone there. As Beowulf held up that monstrous head by its unlovely locks, it was indeed as ugly a thing as they had seen, an awesome sight, but one that no longer brought fear to their hearts, only rapturous relief and great gratitude towards this prince of warriors. They listened to him now, Hrothgar and his queen, and all the gathered thanes. "We have brought back for you, great king of Denmark, all these trophies of our victory. They were heavy indeed to carry, but our hard song made light of the burden. I will not pretend to you it was easy, my lord. It was a close-run thing, this fight under water, a fight I very nearly lost before it had begun. Hrunting, fine weapon though it is, was useless against this she-wolf of the deep, but God was with me, and I thank only him for my victory. I snatched up another sword, a giant of a weapon, hanging there on the wall, and with it I avenged all the murder and misery inflicted on you by this family of fiends. First the monster's head I severed, then this grisly reminder still lying there from that earlier conflict. Your enemies are dead. You have your peace back, so all of you may now sleep safely in Heorot. We have seen the last of them, my Lord King. Everyone here can rest assured of that, I promise you. Then Beowulf presented to the silver-haired king the golden hilt, all that remained of the giant sword that had done such damage in the fight. So the hilt belonged fittingly to Hrothgar, the best and wisest of kings. He spoke now to the silent hall. Beowulf, my friend and best of men, your name and your nobility will resound throughout the world, even in the farthest corners. I marvel not only at your strength, but at the wisdom of one so young. Stay as generous and peaceable as you are, Beowulf. Do not become as other heroes have before you, so tuned to battle that a thirst for blood consumes you. I tell you this because I am old in years, and I know that all men, however noble and fine, are frail, and our lives are finite. At the height of our powers, when triumph succeeds triumph, we cannot imagine an end to our success. Pride grows within us, despite ourselves. We can easily forget that our powers are God-given, and should be used only in his service. Know, beloved Beowulf, that even with you the end must come. Flesh and strength will fail. You are now in the high noon of your strength, but waiting for you, and not so far away, is sickness maybe, or a slashing sword, burning fire or drowning wave, the stab of a dagger, or just old age. Death awaits us all. I thank God in his great mercy my own death has been postponed long enough for me to enjoy this moment, the end of Grendel and his kind, to gaze in triumph at his gory head. So, remembering all this, let us rejoice and feast together tonight, and in the morning I shall give you all your promised treasure. But they did not feast long that night, for Hrothgar the old king was tired and wished to rest. No feast can continue without its host, and the truth was that the Yeatis prince was ready for his bed too. He had earned his rest that night, I think. Think of 5 things that have happened in the story so far. Pause the video and note them down in your book. Here are my 5 things. Firstly, Hrothgar built a hall, Grendel attacked it, and Beowulf came to help. Then, Beowulf killed Grendel by pulling off his arm, but his mother came for revenge. After that, Beowulf dived into the pool and fought and killed Grendel's mother. Next, the Geats took Grendel's head back to Hrothgar at Heorot. And finally, Hrothgar rewarded the Geats, and they sailed home to King Hygelac. Today, you're going to finish planning your newspaper reports. What happened in the fight? What information will you include? You should have notes from yesterday, but if you can't remember, listen again to Chapter 1, Part 3 and make some notes. Newspapers often include alliteration, especially in the headlines. Alliteration is when we have a lot of words starting with the same letter in a sentence. It doesn't have to be every word, and all the words don't have to be right next to each other, but often in newspapers they are, for example in the headlines. And my example of an alliterative headline would be Brave Beowulf battles beast. Have a think about an alliterative headline you're going to use for your report. Think of the characters, think of what they were doing. Can you get 3 or 4 words that make a headline that all start with the same letter? Pause the video and make a note in your book. Newspapers often use adjectives in front of people's names. What adjectives are you going to use in front of Beowulf and Grendel's names? And can you make them alliterate? You're going to need a few of these because these 2 characters are going to be mentioned more than once in your newspaper report. I've started you off with a couple of examples which you can magpie, but I'd like you to create some of your own as well. So for Beowulf, I've got brave Beowulf, and for Grendel, I've got gruesome Grendel. Make a table like the one I've drawn and see if you can think of some more alliterative noun phrases, I suppose you would call them, for those 2 characters. Pause the video, and when you're done, move to the next slide. Now use these questions to plan your report for tomorrow. Remember to use the example from Monday to show you the kind of things to include. You can pause the video and read off this strip, but if it's too small, I'm going to read through the questions and you can pause in between them whilst you write in your book. Firstly, what is the name of your newspaper? This will be your masthead at the top of the page. Secondly, what is your headline? Do you have a subheading? Do you have a stand first? Next, what information are you going to include in your introductory sentence? Remember, in a newspaper you need to tell the reader almost everything about the story at the beginning so that the reader can decide if they're interested in reading the rest of the story. Next, how will you describe the fight? What adjectives and adverbs will you use? Think about descriptive words. Ferocious, slashing. Think of those fronted adverbials. As quick as a flash, without a thought for his own safety. Suddenly. Desperately. All those kinds of words that we can use to make our stories more interesting. Next, what quotes will you use? Who are they from? What will they say? Look at the quotes that you've already got written in your book. Is this enough? Do you need to edit them? Do you want to add some more or change them? Next, what additional information will you include? Who was there? Who did you talk to? When did you hear about this? What are people thinking? Finally, how will you end your report? It's useful to end the report with some sort of conclusion. You could talk about how the people of Heorot are now happy to be safe. You could talk about how some people wondered if this was really the end. The choice is yours. Make sure your story doesn't just suddenly end. When you've done all that, you'll be ready to write your newspaper tomorrow.